The wind cut across Fort Laramie like a knife that February morning, cold enough to freeze a man's breath halfway out of his chest. Soldiers hurried across the yard, traders huddled near the smithy, and horses stomped nervously at the sharp air. But no one looked colder, inside or out, than Lady Charlotte Whitmore. She stood in the middle of the parade ground wearing a fine blue cloak that once turned heads in Boston. Now, it only drew whispers. Her hands shook inside her gloves as she watched her father's horse circle around to face her. The world she had lived in for 26 years was ending right here in the dirt. "Charlotte?" Judge Theodore Whitmore announced loudly, making sure the gathered officers could hear every word. "You know very well why we are here." Charlotte tried to hold her chin high, but her body betrayed her with a shiver. The cold wasn't the worst part. It was the shame. 7 years, 3 marriages, 3 humiliating annulments. Every doctor, every midwife, every expensive specialist her father hired said the same thing. She was barren, empty, worthless, and now her father was making sure the frontier knew it too. Judge Whitmore motioned toward the tall man standing beside 2 pack horses. "As agreed, Mr. Daniel Hawthorne will take you into his household. You will serve him in whatever capacity he sees fit. Your presence here settles my debt." Charlotte slowly turned her head toward the mountain man. Daniel Hawthorne stood silent in buckskin and fur, the kind of man frontier stories were born from. Broad shoulders, weathered jaw, long dark hair tied back at his neck. The kind of man who belonged to the mountains more than to people. His pale gray eyes watched her without judgment, without pity, and that startled her more than anything. Her father kept going, his voice sharp as broken glass. "She comes with documentation. Medical reports confirming her sterility. She will bear you no children, but she is trained in reading, writing, household management, and any tasks you might require." Charlotte felt her throat tighten. Not a single word of comfort. Not a single gesture that she was still his daughter, just property being transferred. "Father, please," she whispered, "don't leave me here. I can go to a convent. I can become a teacher. I don't need—" "Silence," he snapped. "I am done spending resources on you. You are a drain with nothing to give back." Charlotte's breath broke in her chest. A drain. Nothing to give back. Sterile. Worthless. Words she had heard for years, now delivered like a final sentence. Judge Whitmore turned his horse sharply. "Mr. Hawthorne, she is yours to command." With that, he rode away without looking back, his riders following in a line that vanished behind a cloud of frozen dust. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Daniel Hawthorne walked past her with a quiet steadiness, checking his horses, tightening buckles, making sure the packs were secure. When she didn't move, he finally spoke, his voice deep and roughened by the mountains. "Can you ride?" Charlotte blinked. "Yes, I can." "Good," he said simply. "It's a long way home. Storm's coming in tonight. We ride in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Just like that, her life in Boston society. Gone. Everything she knew. Gone. Sent away as punishment to the home of a stranger in a wilderness that swallowed people whole. She forced herself to change into the divided riding skirt her maid had secretly packed. When she returned, Daniel was mounted on a massive black horse, sitting tall and steady. He offered his hand to help her onto a smaller mare, with gentle eyes. The moment she settled into the saddle, the cold wind seemed to push her forward, as if the frontier itself was closing the gates of her old life behind her. For hours they rode in silence. Charlotte kept waiting for him to demand something, insult her, treat her like the worthless woman her father claimed she was. But Daniel Hawthorne only checked the trail, glanced back to make sure she followed, and kept his eyes on the mountains rising, like jagged white giants ahead. By late afternoon, snow began to fall thick and heavy. Daniel led them beneath a rocky overhang, where he built a fire with calm skill. Charlotte brought water from a nearby stream, her fingers turning numb before she returned. He handed her a tin cup of hot tea without a word. When they finished eating, he finally spoke. "Your father said you can't bear children," he said quietly, watching the fire. "That true?" Charlotte froze. No one had ever asked her that like it mattered. They just accepted it, stamped her with it, used it against her. "3 physicians confirmed it," she said softly. "They said I'm defective, that I'll never be." "Defective?" Daniel interrupted. "Who told you that?" She stared into the flames, feeling old shame crawl up her throat. "Everyone," she whispered. "My husbands, their families, society. My father." Daniel didn't speak for a long moment. Then, in a calm, steady voice, he said, "Out here, worth isn't measured by a womb." Charlotte's eyes burned with unexpected tears. He tossed another log on the fire. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is harder." Charlotte lay there wrapped in a blanket that smelled of pine and smoke, listening to the mountain wind howl through the dark. She had been given to this man like punishment, but the way he spoke to her didn't feel like punishment at all. It felt like the beginning of something she didn't understand yet, but fate did, and it had plans she could never imagine. Charlotte woke before sunrise to the sound of Daniel Hawthorne moving around the camp. He packed with the same calm, steady rhythm she was beginning to recognize. No wasted motion, no frustration, no anger, just quiet purpose. When she tried to help, her hands stiff from cold, Daniel simply nodded. "Good, the mountains don't wait for anyone." They rode west as the sky turned pale pink, the storm clouds gathering behind them like a warning. Charlotte's muscles ached from the day before, but she forced herself to keep pace. Anything was better than giving him another reason to see her as a burden. By midday, the snow returned, heavier than before. Daniel pressed on, his eyes scanning the land as if he could read the storm like a book. Charlotte watched him through the curtain of white, surprised at how safe she felt riding behind him. This man didn't talk much, but everything about him felt solid and dependable. Just before dusk, the blizzard hit. Snow slammed sideways across the open land, blinding them. The wind howled like a living thing. Charlotte could barely hold the reins. Her horse stumbled, and panic surged in her chest. But Daniel was suddenly beside her, steadying her mare with one hand. "Stay close!" he shouted over the storm. "We're almost there." Almost where? She couldn't see anything but white. But Daniel knew. He guided them along a narrow trail she never would have found alone. Then, through the swirling snow, a small cabin appeared, tucked between tall pines and sheltered cliffs. Smoke stains marked the chimney. Heavy shutters protected the windows. Home, at least, his, not hers. Not yet. When she tried to dismount, her legs buckled under her. Daniel caught her before she hit the ground. Without a word, he lifted her in his arms and carried her inside the cabin. She felt the heat of his body through his coat. It startled her how strong and gentle he was at the same time. Inside, the cabin was warm, simple, and surprisingly clean. A single room with a loft, rough-hewn furniture, and shelves lined with jars, tools, and books. Books in a mountain man's home. That surprised her most of all. Daniel set her on a chair near the hearth, then moved around the room with swift efficiency. Coats hung, horses checked, fire lit, stew heated, water boiling. He worked like a man used to surviving alone. Charlotte watched him quietly, expecting commands, insults, or cold criticism. Instead, he handed her a warm cup of broth. "Drink. You're freezing." "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once and sat across from her, sharpening a knife, the firelight glinting along the blade. After a long silence, he finally asked, "Why'd your father really send you here?" Charlotte looked down at her hands. "Because I failed him. Because I couldn't give any of my husbands a child. Because he said I was a shame to the family." Daniel frowned slightly. "That's not failure. That's biology. And last I checked, no one controls that." "No one else sees it that way," she murmured. "I'm not. Everyone else." Quote. His words were simple, but they landed deep inside her chest, warmer than the fire itself. Days passed as the snow trapped them inside the valley. Charlotte expected Daniel to treat her like a servant, as her father instructed. But he never did. He gave her choices, not orders, tasks, not demands. He taught her how to cook with frontier ingredients, how to mend leather, how to stack firewood, how to set traps. She failed more often than she succeeded. Bread burned. Sewing tore. Kindling snapped wrong. A pot of stew overflowed. But every time she apologized, expecting anger, Daniel simply showed her how to try again. Patience was something she was not used to receiving. One night, after she accidentally spilled a bucket of water near the hearth, she burst into frustrated tears. "I'm useless out here," she choked. "I can't do anything right. I'm just broken." Daniel stopped what he was doing and looked at her with a steady gaze that didn't waver. "Charlotte," he said quietly, "nothing about you is broken." "You don't understand," she whispered. "In Boston, a woman is nothing if she can't give a man children." "Then Boston's wrong." She blinked, breath catching in her throat. Daniel placed another log on the fire and sat down across from her. "I lost my wife 10 years ago," he said softly. "Childbirth took her. Took our baby, too. Doctors couldn't save them either, so don't tell me fertility is the only thing that makes a woman valuable. I won't hear it." Charlotte's heart clenched. He had known loss deeper than she imagined. Yet here he was, steady, kind, patient with her stumbles. She wiped her tears. "Your wife, I'm sorry." Daniel nodded. "Me too, but life keeps moving, and so do we." Another week passed. Charlotte grew stronger, more confident. She felt something blooming inside her she hadn't felt in years. Self-worth. One morning, Daniel asked her to join him outside as the snow melted. They walked through the clearing, the sun soft on their faces, the silence calm and peaceful. "You're adapting," he said. "Most people from the cities fall apart in a week, but not you." She didn't know what to say. Daniel stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "You should know something," he said. "Whatever reason your father sent you here, I didn't take you because I wanted a servant or a debt paid. I took you because you deserved a chance to live somewhere you weren't judged for one thing." She swallowed hard. Why do you care?" Quote, Daniel's voice dropped to a quiet rumble. "Because you remind me of someone who fought to be more than what the world allowed." Charlotte felt her heart beat faster. Something was changing between them, something neither of them spoke aloud. But the mountains had their own plans. And before long, a moment would come that neither Charlotte nor Daniel expected, one that would test everything they had begun to build. The last bite of winter melted away slowly, and with it came long days of work that pulled Charlotte and Daniel together more than either of them intended. She helped repair the roof, learned how to tan hides, and even managed to track a rabbit on her own. Daniel watched her progress quietly, but every now and then his expression softened with something like pride. Charlotte was changing, growing stronger, braver, more sure of herself. And Daniel was the first person in her life who looked at her without seeing failure. One evening, after a long day of clearing fallen branches from a nearby creek, Charlotte found herself lingering near the table as Daniel worked on sharpening an axe. The lamplight flickered across his face, catching the silver in his beard. She didn't mean to stare, but something about him, his steadiness, his silence, the way he listened, pulled at her. Daniel set the axe down and looked at her. "You all right?" Charlotte hesitated. Yes. I just keep wondering why you haven't asked anything of me. My father said you could make me serve you however you wanted." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I'm not your father." "I know," she said softly. "That's why I'm asking." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Charlotte, I didn't take you to punish you. I didn't take you for labor or debt or any reason your father assumes a man would. I took you because I know what it feels like to be thrown away for something beyond your control." Her breath caught. "That's not something a person comes back from easily," he continued. "But you're coming back from it anyway. That matters." Charlotte felt warmth spread in her chest, a warmth she hadn't felt in years. "You've given me a place to breathe, to learn, to exist." Daniel's voice lowered. "You've given this cabin more life than it's had in 10 years. Charlotte's heart sped up. And before either of them could break the moment, a knock sounded at the cabin door, hard, desperate, frantic. Daniel tensed immediately. He grabbed his rifle and opened the door to find a young mother, Emma Reed, her face streaked with tears, clutching a limp toddler in her arms. "Please," she sobbed. "My baby, he's burning up with fever. We didn't know where else to go. We heard you know medicine." Daniel reached for the child at once. "Get inside." Quote. Charlotte scrambled to boil water and gather cloths as Daniel checked the little boy's temperature. Charlotte watched, heart pounding, as Daniel gave instructions. "Charlotte, keep his head cool. I need willow bark. Right side shelf. And a clean knife." She obeyed without hesitation, moving as if she had helped with fevers all her life. Hours passed. The fever finally broke. The child began to breathe normally again. Emma collapsed into tears of relief, gripping Charlotte's hands. "Thank you," she whispered, "both of you." When Emma left with her sleeping son, Daniel washed his hands in the basin and let out a slow breath. Charlotte could see the weight of memory in his eyes. "You saved them," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "We saved them." Charlotte stepped closer. She hesitated, then reached for his hand. Daniel didn't pull away. It was the first time they had willingly touched. And that moment changed everything. Weeks passed. Spring warmed the valley. Wildflowers began to bloom. Charlotte's laughter returned, something she hadn't heard from herself in years. Daniel found himself watching her more often, noticing the way she moved, the way she worked, the way she spoke with gentle confidence. One afternoon, after a supply run to a distant trading cabin, a sudden downpour forced them to take shelter beneath a rocky ledge. Rain hammered the ground. Thunder rolled over the mountains. Charlotte shivered beneath her damp cloak. "Come here," Daniel said. He wrapped his fur coat around both of them to shield her from the cold. Charlotte felt his heartbeat against her cheek, felt his breath warm her hair, felt a kind of safety she had dreamed about but never touched. "Daniel," she whispered. He didn't answer with words. He just tipped her chin up and kissed her. It was not rushed, not desperate. It was steady, warm, certain. The kind of kiss that didn't demand anything, only offered. When the storm passed, they rode home in quiet understanding. Something had changed, something deep and real. That night, Daniel spoke first. "I know the life you came from. I know you didn't choose this place or me. So if you want to leave when the pass is open," his voice faltered, "I'll take you wherever you want to go." Charlotte lowered her eyes. "And if I want to stay?" Quote. Daniel's breath caught. "Then stay." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Daniel, I don't feel unwanted here. I feel seen. I feel capable. I feel," her voice broke, "I feel like I belong for the first time." Daniel reached for her hand. "Then stay as my wife." Tears welled in Charlotte's eyes. "I thought you didn't want a family after what happened to—" "I want a life with you," Daniel said, "children or no children. I want you." Her answer came with a trembling smile. "Then yes, yes, I'll marry you." Summer arrived with soft breezes and long golden days. Charlotte grew stronger, happier, clearer in who she was. The cabin no longer felt like a place she was sent to. It felt like a home she chose. But in early July, something unexpected happened. She woke with nausea, then fatigue, then dizziness. The same symptoms she had watched in Emma Reed before her baby came. At first she dismissed them. Sterile women didn't get sick this way. Until one morning when Daniel found her sitting outside, pale and shaking. "What's wrong?" he asked, crouching beside her. Charlotte took his hand and placed it on her abdomen. "Daniel," she whispered, "I think—" Her voice cracked. "Daniel, I think I'm pregnant." His face went still. His breath stopped. "That's not possible," he murmured. "I know." He pressed his ear to her belly, listened, waited. Then his hand trembled. "Charlotte," he whispered, eyes filling, "I hear 2 heartbeats." Her breath caught painfully. "2?" He swallowed hard. "Possibly 3." Shock washed through her, then fear, then wonder. Daniel pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the entire frontier. "Charlotte," he whispered into her hair, "you were never broken." Not then, not now, not ever. Months passed. The pregnancy was hard, but Daniel cared for her with every skill he had. And when her time finally came, a long night of pain and courage, she brought 3 healthy babies into the world. Triplets. A miracle no one believed possible. As Daniel held all 3 babies in his arms, tears streamed down his face. Charlotte reached out, touching their tiny hands, overwhelmed by the sight. Her whole life she had been called barren, useless, worthless. But the mountains had rewritten her story. She wasn't punishment. She wasn't shame. She wasn't broken. She was a mother. And Daniel Hawthorne, the mountain man she had been given to as punishment, became the man who gave her a family, a future, and the truth about her worth. Not because she bore children, but because he saw her and loved her. When Charlotte looked around their cabin filled with firelight and newborn cries, she understood something her father never could. This was where she was meant to be. This was the life she was meant to live. And this impossible miracle, was the beginning of everything.